He never shouted, never lashed out. Not once until the day the school bully shoved him in front of a crowd and finally learned who he was messing with. At Roosevelt Middle, most students had a group, some rolled deep with the basketball team. Others loitered near the restrooms trading vapes or swapping gossip by the vending machines. But Elijah Braxton didn't belong to any of them, and he didn't seem to care. By 13, Elijah had perfected the art of going unnoticed. He wore plain colors, kept his head down, and carried one thing everywhere: a weathered, battle-scarred sketchbook clutched to his chest like armor. His shoes were always a little scuffed, his hoodie sleeves too long, but the boy could draw. Really draw. He didn't say much, but every page in that sketchbook spoke volumes. Wolves mid-howl, cities collapsing, a mother clutching her child in a house lit by fire. The kind of art that made you stop mid-step, but most kids at Roosevelt never noticed. Because most kids never noticed Elijah, except when they did. He sat second to last in the back row of math class, kept his gaze low. Never raised his hand, even when he had the answer. Not because he was scared, because staying invisible meant staying safe. Kids like Elijah didn't get attention, they got mocked, shoved, or worse. Just once he'd let a piece of himself show. It was last fall. Mr. Rosen, the art teacher, held up Elijah's sketchbook for the class. "This," he said, "is raw talent." Elijah didn't smile, didn't look up, he hated it. That same day, someone dumped water in his backpack during gym. No one confessed, Elijah didn't say a word. That's how it went: keep quiet, stay out of sight. Maybe, just maybe, you'd get through the year without permanent damage. He wasn't lonely though, not really. After school, he walked home to their small apartment in the northeast corner of Toledo, Ohio. 2 bedrooms. Creaky floors, the warm smell of garlic and turmeric always floating from the kitchen. His mom worked 2 jobs and somehow still managed to smile. His older brother, Malik, 5 years older, part-time mechanic, full-time protector, was built like a tank with a stare that could freeze a room. But with Elijah, he softened. He'd quietly peer over Elijah's shoulder while he sketched, never saying much. Then one night, Malik noticed the bruises on Elijah's arm. "You trip?" he asked. Elijah paused, then nodded. Malik didn't buy it. "You let someone touch you like that again," he said calmly, "and I'll show you what pain feels like." Then he handed Elijah a worn, faded blue belt from a dusty old duffel bag. "Back when I trained. You're learning now. I don't care if you never use it, but you're gonna know how to move if someone crosses a line." And so, in the middle of their cramped living room, with laundry baskets shoved aside and their mom yelling from the kitchen not to break anything, Elijah learned. Learned how to breathe, how to fall and get back up, how to stay planted when someone tried to knock you down. He didn't like fighting, but he liked the control. Jiu-jitsu wasn't about throwing punches, it was about holding steady when the world tilted sideways. About knowing you could act, even if you didn't. Back at school, Elijah stayed quiet. But something had changed. He walked a little taller now. Moved like someone who carried a secret. He still got bumped in the hall sometimes, still heard the snickers and whispers. Still kept his head low, but he was waiting. Waiting for the moment when someone would finally test him. It came, not the way he expected, and not from someone he could ignore. It started with the locker door, not slammed hard enough to echo. Just enough to make it personal. "Hey, sketchbook," came a voice. "That sad face of yours, is it permanent, or just for math class?" Elijah didn't look up. He knew that voice. Everyone did. Miles Redfield. 8th grade. Red hoodie. Brand new Jordans. Always flanked by 2 kids who laughed too loud and said nothing of their own. Miles wasn't the kind of bully who chased you. He was the kind who made a game of breaking people from the inside. And today, he'd picked the wrong one. Down the hallway, he didn't scream or make a scene. He was smart about it, calculated. Picked his targets the way a snake watches a rabbit. Slow, patient, waiting for the exact second no one else is paying attention. Somehow, Elijah ended up in his sights. At first, it was just name-calling, sketchbook, silent film, gloom kid. Then came the shoulder checks between classes, sharp, sudden hits that sent Elijah's books flying. The hallway kept moving like nothing happened. Even the teachers saw it sometimes. They looked away. Elijah said nothing, just gathered his things and kept walking. But that's what Miles couldn't stand. The silence. He wanted a reaction, any reaction. So he kept escalating. One morning before homeroom, Elijah opened his locker to find his homework torn into pieces. His pencil pouch was missing. In its place sat a moldy sandwich and a crumpled note that read, "Lunch for the artist." He didn't cry. He just stood there for a long while, staring at the mess. His hands were clenched, not trembling, just frozen. Coach Dobbins, the gym teacher, walked by, glanced at the scene, and kept going. Elijah quietly cleaned it up and went to class. That night at home, Malik saw the scrape on Elijah's elbow and the crease in his collar. "Somebody touch you again?" Malik asked. Elijah shrugged. "Say the word, and I'll walk straight into that school," Malik said. "I got it," Elijah replied, barely above a whisper. "I'm okay." Malik didn't push. But when they cleared space in the living room that evening, he drilled Elijah even harder. That night, Elijah learned how to block a grab from standing. Over and over, until his body did it without thinking. Miles wasn't finished, not even close. By Friday, the cafeteria smelled like overcooked beans and mystery meat. Elijah took his usual seat in the back corner. Rice, rubbery chicken patty, untouched milk. He opened his sketchbook, fork still in hand. A tray slammed down across from him. "You ever draw yourself crying?" Miles asked, grinning that phony grin. Elijah stayed quiet. "Too good to talk, huh?" Miles leaned in. "Walk around like you got some kind of secret. That what your brother taught you? That big dude with the busted-up car and hand-me-down tools?" Elijah didn't flinch, but for the first time, he looked straight into Miles' eyes and held it. That moment shifted everything. Miles wasn't used to that. Not from someone like Elijah. It wasn't angry. It wasn't scared, just steady. Miles stood slowly, then swept Elijah's tray off the table. It clattered to the floor. Milk, beans, everything splattered across the tile. The table turned. Some kids laughed. Most didn't. Elijah stood. Picked up the tray, dumped it, sat back down. Opened his sketchbook. Went back to drawing. And in Miles' eyes, that calm more than any punch was disrespect. Next time, he'd make sure there was an audience. On the second floor of a worn-down building off Dorr Street, apartment to be was home. The kitchen window didn't shut right. The heater knocked all winter. Every night, Elijah fell asleep to his mom's alarms going off before her next shift. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Sharonda Braxton held their family together with little more than stubbornness and a chipped coffee mug. She worked the hospital cafeteria by day, cleaned downtown offices on weekends. Even when her feet ached, she still peeked into Elijah's room at night and whispered, "You good, baby?" He'd say yes. She'd always know when it wasn't true. Then there was Malik, 19. 6'2", hands stained with engine grease. Built like a linebacker but moved like someone raised by a soft-voiced woman who never stopped trying. After dinner, the living room turned into a training ground. Coffee table pushed aside, couch cushions on the floor for padding. "You ever get grabbed from behind like this?" Malik asked one night. Elijah shook his head. "You might. And when it happens, you don't think, you just move." Malik showed him how to shift his weight, trap the arm, pivot, roll out. Again. And again. No yelling. No pushing past the limit. Just correction. Repetition. Patience. Elijah liked those nights more than he ever said out loud. It wasn't just the moves. It was the rhythm. The quiet. The way Malik's voice stayed low. The way their mom would pass by with a laundry basket, smile half hidden in a towel over her shoulder, proud and worried all at once. "You sure about teaching him all this?" she asked one night. "Better he knows and never needs it," Malik said, "than not know and wish he did." She nodded, didn't say more, but she looked at Elijah like she understood what he was carrying, and maybe, in her way, she was carrying some of it with him. That night, Elijah sat on the floor, sketchbook in his lap. The page was nearly full. 2 boys in a lunchroom, one standing, one sitting. A tray frozen midair, milk suspended in time. He didn't draw faces. He didn't need to. He stared at the page, then flipped a blank one, started again. This time, he drew hands, open, moving, one blocking, one redirecting. The lines weren't just creative now, they were deliberate. Saturday morning, Malik knocked on his door, shoes on. "Where we going?" "Park. Time you feel what this means outside these 4 walls." Wilson Park wasn't pretty patchy grass, cracked concrete on the court. But it was alive, kids shouting, old men slamming dominoes, music drifting from someone's speaker. Behind the rec center, they found a quiet patch of grass. Malik showed him how to fall without pain, how to use someone's strength against them, how to take a hit, breathe, and keep moving. You don't gotta be the biggest, Malik said, crouching beside him. Just the one who doesn't panic. That stuck. So did the look Malik gave him afterward. It wasn't just a brother's look anymore. It said, "You're ready." But even with all the training, nothing could prepare Elijah for what came next. When practice would turn into reality, and this time, everyone would be watching. It was Tuesday, mac and cheese day. The kind that looked more like orange paste than pasta, but at least it didn't include mystery meat. Elijah moved through the lunch line like usual, head down, tray in hand. Sketchbook tucked tight beneath his arm like a shield. He scanned the cafeteria, found his usual seat third table from the back, by the window, but today, he wasn't fast enough. "Move," someone said behind him. A tray bumped his lower back. He turned slightly, Miles, and behind him, those same shadows, Zeke and Cody. Elijah said nothing, just stepped aside. Miles laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at this little mouse, you even make noise." Elijah slid into his seat, opened his sketchbook, tried to block it all out. A few minutes later, Miles showed up at his table, no tray, just standing, eyes locked on Elijah like he'd picked his moment. "You ever draw me?" he asked. No response. "Bet you did. Bet you made me look like some kind of villain, huh?" He chuckled, then reached for Elijah's sketchbook. Elijah's hand clamped down on the cover fast. "Let go, man," Miles said, tugging harder. But Elijah didn't. Instead, he stood up. The cafeteria went silent. This wasn't normal. Elijah never stood up. Never resisted. Never spoke. Miles yanked again. "What, you deaf?" Still holding on, Elijah spoke one word. "No." It wasn't loud, but it landed. Miles blinked. "What did you say?" "I said no." Then, without warning, Miles let go and shoved Elijah backward, both palms to the chest. Elijah stumbled 2 steps, regained balance. His sketchbook hit the floor with a loud slap. Everyone saw it. It was like time froze. Even the lunch lady stopped mid-scoop. Elijah didn't reach for the book. He stepped forward. Miles smiled, thinking he'd won. But Elijah grabbed his wrist, just like Malik taught him, and twisted controlled, not to hurt, just to show. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't shout. He shifted his weight, pivoted, and in less than 3 seconds, Miles was flat on his back, eyes wide, face flushed, stunned more than hurt. A ripple of gasps swept through the cafeteria like static in the air. Elijah didn't strike a pose. He didn't smirk. He just stood there a moment, breathing steady, then picked up his sketchbook and walked away. That's when Mr. Furlong, the 8th grade science teacher, who'd been eating lunch in the corner with a few other staff, suddenly stood and called out, "Braxton, hold it right there." Elijah stopped. He didn't argue. He didn't make a scene. He simply followed Mr. Furlong out through the double doors and into the hallway, headed toward the front office. Back in the cafeteria, no one moved for a long moment. Zeke and Cody stood rooted in place, slack-jawed. Even the teachers looked frozen, like they were still trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Miles stayed down for several more seconds, then scrambled to his feet and flung a lunch tray against the wall. "He's crazy, kid's crazy," but no one backed him up. No one clapped, either, just silence. While Elijah sat in the front office waiting, the real noise began not in the cafeteria, but in whispers spreading down the halls. Because for the first time, people realized what happens when someone quiet finally reaches their breaking point. Elijah sat in the blue plastic chair, sketchbook resting on his knees. He didn't open it, didn't tap his foot, didn't fidget. Just stared at the tiled floor. One of the tiles near the edge was chipped, a small crack, a missing sliver, overlooked, like the hallway. Like the school, like so many things stepped on again and again, until they begin to crumble. The door to the principal's office opened. "Elijah," Principal Aldridge said, her voice low but tense. He stood and walked in. Mr. Furlong was seated to her right. Ms. Lindstrom, the art teacher, sat on the left. None of them looked particularly comfortable. "Elijah," Aldridge said again. "Let's talk about what happened." He didn't answer. "Do you understand why you're here?" He gave a small nod. Do you want to tell us what happened in the cafeteria? He paused, then said, he took my sketchbook. And you responded by putting him on the floor, Aldridge said carefully. I didn't hit him, Elijah replied quietly but firmly. Mr. Furlong leaned forward. You threw him. No, Elijah said. I moved, Aldridge exhaled. There's a line, Elijah. Even if someone's bothering you. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on Elijah. It was on the system, the adults, the way complaints disappeared into inboxes. The way problems got ignored until they boiled over. Ms. Lindstrom brought it up during the staff meeting. She said Miles had been harassing kids for years, not just Elijah. And when she asked why no one ever stepped in, no one had a good answer. Mr. Dobbins, the pay teacher, muttered, he's just loud. We've all got loud kids, to which Ms. Lindstrom replied, loud kids don't make 3 students stop coming to school because they're scared. That landed hard. Parents started calling. One mother said her son stopped riding the bus because of Miles. Another said her daughter transferred schools after weeks of being targeted with no call back from staff. It wasn't just about Miles anymore. It was about every ignored warning. Every time a quiet kid got taught that being invisible was safer. Principal Aldridge was forced to act. She initiated a review of old complaints. Sent home a carefully worded letter about a new student safety task force. It sounded polished, but the kids weren't watching the words. They were watching the actions. Miles kept to himself. No one teased him. No one stuck by him either. Zeke and Cody kept their distance. Funny how fast loyalty fades when it stops being safe. Elijah, meanwhile, became the face of a conversation he never asked to start. Ms. Lindstrom interrupted. And what about the line that kept getting crossed before today? We all knew Miles was picking on him. We seen it. No one said a word, because she was right. After a long pause, Aldridge spoke again. We'll need to contact your mother. A report has to be filed. Elijah nodded once. You can wait in the counselor's office for now. He stood, picked up his sketchbook, and walked out. That afternoon, Sharonda Braxton stepped into the front office in her work uniform. She didn't yell. She didn't make excuses. She listened. Then she turned to Principal Aldridge. You know how many times I've told this school that my son was being harassed? Aldridge opened her mouth, but Sharonda raised a hand to stop her. I've got the emails, the voicemails no one returned. I told you when he came home with bruises. I told you when he stopped eating lunch. And now you want to talk about what went too far. Mr. Furlong looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. Sharonda turned to Elijah. You okay, baby? He nodded. Good. Let's go. Aldridge stood. Mrs. Braxton, we're still reviewing the incident. No, Sharonda said firmly. You're reacting to what finally happened. That's not the same. They walked out without another word. By the next day, everyone had seen the video. Some 8th grader had filmed it from across the lunchroom. No edits, no commentary, just the moment Miles ended up on the floor, and the quiet kid walked away. Some said Elijah should have been suspended. Others said he should have been applauded. Most didn't know what to think. Because the truth was, Miles wasn't just a bully. He was a reflection of every hallway shove, every whispered insult, every time a teacher looked the other way. Every moment silence felt easier than action. And Elijah shattered that reflection not with violence, but with the deliberate, controlled motion of someone who had finally had enough. Not to harm, but to protect. Even Miles didn't say much the next day. He came in late, sat in the back, ate alone. No one bothered him. But no one defended him either. Elijah returned to his usual table. But this time, no one disturbed him. A few students glanced his way like they wanted to say something but didn't. And that was okay. He didn't need applause. He needed space. He opened his sketchbook and kept drawing. But the story didn't end there. Because now, people started asking different questions, not about what Elijah did, but why it had come to that. At Kennedy Middle School, something began to shift. Quietly. No grand assemblies. No loud speeches, just a change in tone. Whispers became real conversations. Why didn't anyone stop Miles before? Did you say anything when he shoved that kid in the hallway? Why does it take a kid snapping before adults pay attention? Ms. Lindstrom approached him quietly. If you ever want to speak during advisory, no pressure. he said no at first. Then a few days later, he saw a sixth-grade girl crying by the water fountain. Her binder lay open on the floor, papers scattered. A few girls nearby laughed like they weren't the reason. Elijah walked over, gathered her papers, handed her the binder, and glanced at the girls. He didn't say a word, but they walked away. The girl looked at him like he was some kind of hero. That night, he changed his mind. It wasn't a big speech, just a few sentences in front of 25 students in room 108. "I don't like talking," he began. "But I'm tired of acting like silence means everything's fine." He opened his sketchbook and held up a drawing: one kid standing alone in a hallway, surrounded by blurred shadows. Some sneering, some with folded arms, others walking by like they saw nothing. "People say bullies are the problem," he said. "But sometimes it's the people who see it and say nothing." He closed the book. "If someone like me can speak up, maybe someone like you can too." He didn't wait around after, just walked out. But that moment lit a spark. 2 weeks after the cafeteria incident, things hadn't magically changed. The halls were still loud, bullies didn't disappear overnight. But eyes were open, and Elijah. He stayed the same, hoodie too big, sketchbook in hand. But now, when he walked the halls, people stepped aside not in fear, but in respect. Even the teachers watched him differently now, not like a problem, not like a mystery. Like someone they owed. Mr. Furlong never said much after that day. But when Elijah handed in a science project, he gave him a small nod. That was enough. Elijah still ate alone, except Fridays. Isaiah, a seventh grader, started sitting at the next table, didn't say much, just kept him company. Then another joined the week after, then another. Not a group, not a movement, just a quiet shift. In the library, Ms. Lindstrom asked Elijah to submit his work for the end-of-year showcase, not just his usual drawings, but the one from the cafeteria, the hands in motion, the blurred hallway kids. She framed them herself. But what stuck with Elijah happened outside school. He and Moloch were walking home from the corner store when a man in a blue vest approached. "You're the kid, right?" Elijah stiffened. "My son's in 6th, the man added. "Told me what you did. Said it made him feel like he could speak up to." Elijah didn't know what to say. The man just smiled. "Thanks." That night, Elijah drew two boys walking on a sidewalk. One taller, older, just a step behind the other. No words between them, but a light behind them cast long shadows ahead. He titled the drawing with one word in the corner: enough. The next day, in English class, Ms. Amari assigned a one-page reflection on someone they admired. Most kids picked athletes. A few chose parents. One picked a YouTuber. Elijah wrote about his mom. "She works 2 jobs," he began, "and still checks if I ate." Then at the end, he added something unexpected. "I used to think staying quiet was the safest choice. But now I know silence just gives the wrong people more room." No sketches, just words. A few days later, Aldridge called him in again. But this time, it wasn't a reprimand. "Elijah," she said, "we're starting a student-led support group. We'd like you to join. You don't have to say anything. Just be there." He hesitated, then nodded once. That Friday, he sat in a circle of 5 students. One girl talked about being teased for her accent. A boy mentioned how no one believed he was being followed after school. There were no easy answers, just listening. Elijah sketched as they spoke. Then he said, "You're not weak because you didn't fight. You're not soft because you're tired. You're just human. And people need to start treating each other like that." Everyone listened. Because when Elijah spoke now, people leaned in, not because he was loud, but because every word mattered. For the first time, Elijah Braxton wasn't invisible. He was heard.